the whole idea of race was shocking for me,
Mhm.
right? It really was, because it wasn't a conversation I grew up having.
Right.
Yeah, colorism was there, but it wasn't really conscious for me either.
Right.
It was
Right.
when I came into the US that I was forced to learn.
Yes. Yes.
Right? You had to, right? Because it's
You,
affecting you.
it's going to impact you. It can impact you economically. It can impact you psychologically. It can impact you legally. I think about when I've worked with colleagues who came here thinking it was just going to be, the land of milk and honey, and then realized that there were barriers to success based on their skin color, just that, because they had the accent, the British or whatever, but you had a hue that was going to not be favorable in some type of advancement or coursework or what have you.
One of the reasons why Jamaicans do not see colorism and texturism for the dehumanizing concepts that we inherited, it's because of the subtle and almost playful way in which we are indoctrinated towards these ideologies. The interesting thing about my journey and realizing this is that it happened by me realizing and studying it in another society before seeing it in the Jamaican society. So I was a Spanish major, and when you're doing a Spanish major, you have to do Spanish literature. Spanish literature is so amazing because it's so political, social, and cultural and economical, and the themes are very, very deep. That's why a lot of Spanish novels get nominated for different awards. But the issue of Afro-Latinismo and anti-blackness and anti-negrismo was something I observed in through Latin American literature first. And the major philosophy or ideology per se in Latin American community regarding this colorism is called mejorar la raza, to improve the race. Basically means if you're born of a darker shade in Latin America, it is your duty to get rid of that blackness by marrying into or trying to procreate with someone who is of lighter complexion or of a lighter race per se. No, the bad thing in Latin America is that most Hispanic people, even though this was an official policy, official government policy, even though it's there and it is real, you'll find very few Hispanic people who admit that this is a thing. Even though it's real and you can see it and you can touch it, these countries also have a policy where they also say it did not happen or it didn't exist. So one, it exists, but some of the governments of these countries have adopted a policy to ignore the history or the presence of this. So most people, even though they know about it, they just pretend that it doesn't happen at all. And this is one of the reasons you realize that if you're trying to speak about racism or colorism in Latin America, it becomes very hostile very quickly, because you're looking at the evidence and they know the evidence, but they ignore it. And at sometimes the ironic thing is that their pushback at you, at a darker person having this conversation, is to use racism or colorism to try to defend their policies, to say that this doesn't exist. So I mentioned that for the comparative. That was that was me as a Spanish major realizing this. Now, in Jamaican society, we do not have an official government mandated mejorar la raza, because even though our motto says out of many one people, there weren't that many differences of races. Over 90% of Jamaicans are dark skinned, so we didn't have that for that policy to be that effective. But when I speak of subtlety, I mean in Jamaican culture, grandmothers or mothers or parents may say something like, make sure say when you go foreign, you go marry somebody, somebody who have pretty ear or long ear and pretty skin, so your picnic cannot come out black and ugly or come out with bad hair. And growing up, and even now, I don't think Jamaicans understand just how deeply dehumanizing it is to believe that something is wrong with your skin and something is wrong with your hair. And And it's a contradiction to what Jamaicans as a religious people believe. So God make us, all of us, the same. Yeah, for religious people. We believe that God made us all equally and he loves us equally. However, we also believe that we have inferior skin and inferior hair compared to other races. And that's where the racial part of religion comes in. A lot of Jamaicans will never admit how religion came to be a part of our lives, or Christianity become a part of our lives, that Christianity was introduced via racism and double T supremacy. But that's a conversation I won't have now because it will take away from the fact what I'm talking about now. This means a pastor and the most devout Christian and the most devout religious person will make statements like this because it is something so ingrained in our culture that we do not realize that, wow, we inherited from those people, and we don't realize that if we claim to be children of one being who loves us equally, we don't see that this, by saying this and understanding it and agreeing it goes against our religion. So even though we don't have an official policy called Mejorar la Raza, most Jamaicans are okay with the concept of make sure you get married somebody with long hair or pretty hair, and yada yada yada. A lot of DJs who sing about dark-skinned women, they end up with light-skinned women. Most male celebrities in Jamaica, they go for light-skinned women. And someone might see this and say I'm saying that something is wrong with light-skinned women, and that is so unfair to say. That's my argument. My argument is that most people are hypocrites. We speak about the love for dark skin, but most of us don't really like dark skin. I mean, one of our greatest legends in dancehall and reggae, we look at someone who protects and advocates for blackness. Their first song was about browning, and only after public pressure did the song about me no stop cry for all black woman. People don't realize just how of a cultural moment that was, a serious moment. But I'm very proud of Jamaicans for having called that out. To being in a country of Jamaicans, and your first song and your first intent or what came to you the quickest was to sing about browning. And that is not blaming the person, that is just saying the person is a part of society where this is what is ideal. So when you're in a society where something is ideal, you're going to represent that in everything you do. Think of 10 DJs or athletes or famous Jamaican men, and think of their partners and see how many of them, their partners, are lighter than them. So yes, there's pressure on the side of black Jamaican men in making sure that they procreate with someone who is lighter, or even Jamaican women who go abroad to make sure they procreate with someone who's lighter. And just in general conversation, society, having friends, your parents from country would be glad if you can have a white friend or an Indian friend or a light-skinned friend come home, because in our mind, in dark-skinned Jamaican mind, we are at the bottom. We're at the bottom of society in terms of our color, and therefore by associating ourselves with lighter skinned Jamaicans or other races, it would improve our social standing and how people look at us. Another more direct example is I don't know if you ever realize that if you have lighter skinned cousins or you have lighter skinned family members who come from abroad, I don't know if it still happens now, but in the 90s, do you remember how your lighter skinned siblings or your lighter skinned cousins or your lighter skinned friends were treated? And it wasn't even hidden. I think even dark skinned children accepted that their skin was inferior, and lighter skinned people rode this train of consciousness that kept going, that you are better than people and therefore you can make life can become easier for you based on the color of your skin. I remember even in the 90s in my parish, Clarendon, based on jobs, I remember they used to give summer jobs in some banks in Maypen, and almost all the people in the bank who got summer jobs were lighter skin, maybe Indian or mixed with white or something. This didn't mean that they were smarter than other people, but there was this assumption that people want lighter skinned people to deal with their money. And of course, if you saw a darker skinned person, it means that they're coming from some place of influence. And one of the reasons why we don't have this conversation together, because some people believe that they're observing. You know, for example, if you see people bleaching, people say, boy, I love bleach, blah, blah, blah. But the people are saying that you're part of a society that promotes lightness and long, pretty hair and pretty skin. But if you see someone who bleaches, you stand on the side and act as if you're separate from the society that encourages something like this. So because of the subtlety and also the almost comical and lack of serious nature to which we approach it, it doesn't seem like this will ever be a conversation. People in Jamaica will continue to be fast-tracked based on their color of their skin and the texture of their hair. The bad thing about this is that most Jamaicans who don't have pretty hair or light skin are okay with this. And that is because we've inherited this notion that the darker your skin and the lack of length of your hair means that you're not worthy as other people with lighter skin and longer straight hair. What do you say?